Since Mount Everest was first climbed by humans in 1953, ascending the highest mountain in the world has seen significant transformation. Thanks to advancements in knowledge, technology, and the substantial infrastructure provided by commercially guided expeditions that provide a veritable highway up the mountain for those willing to accept both the risks and a hefty price tag, hundreds of mountaineers are able to accomplish the feat each year. Subscribe to AWZ and make sure to hit the notification button to get more upcoming videos. At the top of the Himalayan mountain range, Mount Everest, also known as Sagarmatha in Nepali and Komolungma in Tibetan, crosses the border between Nepal and Tibet. Even though climbing to the top of the world is difficult and dangerous due to the high elevation, avalanches, icefalls, and other dangers, the mountain is relatively close to the equator, at a latitude of about 28 degrees, the same as Tampa, Florida. Everest, according to estimates from Earth scientists, is only 50 to 60 million years old. The highest peak on Earth was created when the Indian and Eurasian tectonic plates clashed, forcing the rocks upward and creating the mountain. This force continues to operate today, raising the summit of Everest by about a quarter inch yearly. At 29,035 feet, the peak of Everest has an atmospheric pressure that is roughly one-third that of sea level, which drastically affects a climber's capacity to breathe in enough oxygen. Scientists have concluded that the human body cannot survive over 19,000 feet for an extended period of time because of this. The chance of developing various illnesses, such as pulmonary edema, cerebral edema, and blood embolisms, increases as climbers ascend further up the mountain and their oxygen consumption decreases. As the heart works harder to pump blood around the body carrying oxygen, the likelihood of frostbite is also significantly raised at such an altitude. Priority is given to the organs that sustain life, the digits come last. To lessen the effects of the extremely high altitude, the vast majority of climbers who ascend Everest carry oxygen tanks. But there are hazards and disadvantages to using bottled oxygen. First off, empty cylinders are usually dumped as litter and are expensive and heavy to transport. Additionally, breathing gas only raises the relative oxygen to roughly the same level as the air at base camp. If it runs out on summit day, the body might not be able to adjust to the sudden lack of oxygen. Last but not least, oxygen units are infamously unreliable, as Everest guide Adrian Ballinger learned in 2018 on summit day when his team encountered a systemic breakdown of their breathing apparatus. Even though 17 alternative ascent routes to the top of Everest have been established, only one of the two are used by the majority of climbers. The Southeast Ridge, established by Tenzing Norgay and Edmund Hillary in 1953, can be reached from Nepal. The North Ridge, which is in Tibet, is the location of George Mallory's disappearance in 1924, which occurred before a Chinese team ultimately finished the climb in 1960. Although seasoned mountaineers claim that the two routes are roughly equivalent in terms of overall difficulty, the difficulties are distinct. Mountaineers on the Southeast Ridge must sprint over the perilous Khumbu icefall, but it is a somewhat shorter summit day and is simpler to descend rapidly in an emergency. On the North Ridge, jeeps can be driven all the way to base camp, but climbers must hike many miles through terrain that is higher than 27,000 feet to reach the summit. When international guides started to pioneer commercial expeditions up the mountain in the 1990s, Mount Everest's fame skyrocketed. Everest attracts hundreds of mountaineers from all around the world to its slopes each year despite the dangers. The Nepal Ministry of Tourism said that 261 of the 347 international climbers who had individual climbing licenses from it in 2018 summited the mountain, together with 302 high-altitude personnel. Alan Arnett, a well-known Everest historian, calculates that an extra 239 climbers succeeded in reaching the summit on the mountain's northern side. Everest is huge business for regional logistical providers and the Nepali government. Depending on the degree of service and the outfitter's level of competence, a position on a commercial team often costs between $40,000 and $100,000. The amount of permission fees collected in 2018 was $5.2 million, according to the Tourism Ministry. A small group of skilled Nepalese guides, who prepare the path with fixed ropes and ladders each spring, equip the camps with necessities like tents, stoves, bottled oxygen, and food, and then patiently coach their Western clients to the top, are the foundation of the industry. Although in the past expeditions would engage the Sherpas, a Tibetan tribe that inhabits the mountain's nearest region, to carry supplies up the mountain, today a variety of ethnic groups work there, earning the less memorable title of high-altitude mountain worker. Most climbers make between $2,500 and $5,000 for a standard 3 to 4 month Everest adventure. Nepalese guides are starting to obtain training and certification to international standards as a result of educational possibilities like the Khumbu Climbing Center in recent years. The Himalayan database states that as of the end of the 2018 climbing season, 295 deaths are known to have occurred while ascending Everest, while 5,294 people have made 9,159 successful summit attempts. In other words, if you attempt to climb Everest, you have a 1 in 100 chance of passing away along the route. The overall death rate, which is calculated as the number of fatalities divided by the total number of climbers, not just those who reach the summit, is roughly 1.2%. According to Alan Arnett, the improvement in equipment, weather predictions, and the increase in professional climbers are the main reasons why Everest is statistically growing safer. There were 170 fatalities on Mount Everest between 1923 and 1999, with 1,169 peaks, or 14.5%. However, there were 123 fatalities, or 1.5%, out of 7,990 peaks between 2000 and 2018. The mountain's real summit is a tiny snow-domed structure roughly the size of a dining room table. There is space for about 6 climbers to stand and take in the scenery, yet on busy days mountaineers must rotate to genuinely stand at the top of the world. Although the weather on Everest is normally at its finest in the second part of May, preparations for a successful ascent begin months earlier. To start acclimatization, the majority of teams gather in Kathmandu in late March. Their high-altitude laborers and base camp support crew are already on the mountain, transporting loads and paving the path to the summit as they make their way toward base camp. In order to acclimatize, climbers make a series of overnight excursions to progressively higher camps up the mountain in April, while the first teams of Nepalese guides reach the summit. Teams aim to have a track created with several miles of fixed ropes extending from base camp to the summit by the second week of May, as well as multiple well-stocked camps along the way. The summit push typically takes place over a taxing 4 to 5 days round journey from base camp after a last rest. Some teams will even decamp the mountain entirely to spend a few nights at lower elevation for optimal recovery. If all goes according to plan, the majority of Everest climbers summit the peak by the 1st of June and depart for home. In 2004, a group of tough Russians successfully climbed the mountain's last new route. While all 3 of Everest's main faces and ridges have been scaled, there are still a number of exciting difficulties that aspiring climbers can take on, such as the unclimbed Fantasy Ridge and the daring Horseshoe Traverse that connects Everest with its 2 neighboring peaks, Lhotse and Nuptse. According to alpinist and National Geographic photographer Corey Richards, Everest is still in many ways a blank canvas. It is still as tall, icy, and intimidating as it ever was. Both creativity and talent can be seen in the way that person decides to ascend it. Everest is no exception. There is always a fresh way to approach everything. In the spring of 2019, Richards will return to the mountain, where he intends to discover his own first ascent to the highest top. Subscribe to AWZ if you like this video and want to see more like it.